Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today on the live stream here at Fox 5 DC Live Digital. We're showing you the exteriors of the U.S. Capitol there on the right side of your screen, and then inside, an inside look on the left side of your screen to what is going on inside. Reverend Billy Graham, who died last week at the age of 99, is lying in honor there. It is an honor usually distinguished, reserved for U.S. presidents. He is now the 5th citizen to do so. There you can see there at the wide shot there, the center of the Rotunda. We're showing you also the outside of what that looks like. We just had some people arrive. You can kind of see the exterior of where people are arriving in line here. We are expected to hear from Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan as well, and President Trump will be speaking here, making some remarks at this ceremony. So you can see here some people coming out. There's Franklin Graham, his son, and members of the family as well. So lots of people here standing. There'll be some photo opportunity as well. But you can see just how full that rotunda is. We're going to leave it here on this sort of double shot. Hey Juan, thanks for watching. Whoever is on with us, we're live in the DC Digital Newsroom, and we're showing you the United States Capitol. This is inside the rotunda on the left side of your screen, and then outside the exteriors, lots of family there gathering together. This ceremony is expected to start very shortly, in a couple of minutes, and it will go on. There will be several remarks, parts of the ceremony, to include a performance by Michael W. Smith, of course a benediction intro, and then a benediction as well, and then summed up in the middle by the presentations from some of the politicians there. There's Mitch McConnell on the left, Paul Ryan as well joining, so we'll be hearing from them shortly. So we're going to mix up the shot for you guys a little bit, bring up some sound. There's the president on your left, arriving with Melania Trump as well. We're going to mix it up and keep you guys fresh for what is going on, give you a couple different shots of this, but this is all happening live right now on Capitol Hill. Reverend Billy Graham lying in honor.
ready, step, 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 File. File. File.
Let us pray. We give you thanks, Almighty God, for the appearance among us of great men and women who inspire us to a greatness beyond most of our imaginings. This day, we honor a man of faith, Billy Graham, whose preaching and teaching was transformative in our nation, calling us to ever greater faithfulness and trust in you. We thank you for his great witness and for modeling for us all the blessings of faithfulness to you, to the gospel, to his vocation in life, and as a husband, father, and friend. As we continue this celebration of honor, grant that all who attend to these proceedings might transcend smallness and limitation and emerge as people desirous of being our best selves in service to all our brothers and sisters as you might call us to be. Dear Lord, thank you for inspiring such greatness in Billy Graham, and continue to bless the United States of America. Amen.
Welcome, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the Graham family, and all our guests, on behalf of the Senate. The Speaker and I are honored you're with us. The man we recognize today shared the gospel with more people face to face than anyone else in history. His clear voice thundered through packed tents, stadiums, auditoriums, parks, and plazas the world over. His warmth and graciousness lit up living rooms and touched hundreds of millions of hearts. And this Scotch-Irish son of dairy farmers became a trusted friend and counselor to American presidents and powerful leaders around the globe. At first blush, the life of Reverend Billy Graham sounds like a personal success story par excellence. A determined young man finds a strong faith at age 16. He starts paddling out in a canoe to practice his preaching on swamp birds and alligators. And eventually, through his own strength and personal greatness, he founds a world-changing ministry, leads historic revivals, and eventually lies here in honor in the United States Capitol while a grateful nation pays respects. a man-made success story for the ages. But the most remarkable thing about Billy Graham is that this isn't his story. Billy knew better than anyone that fame and an impressive Rolodex weren't the real standards of success. His aim was simpler: sharing the good news with as many souls as he possibly could. And when there were triumphs, Billy insisted they were not man-made in the slightest. The secret of my work, he explained, is God. I would be nothing without him. That is what made Billy Graham America's pastor. That is how he inspired countless life-changing conversions. Not his great talents, so much as his deep humility, his unwavering fidelity to faith and family, his plain-spoken preaching of essential truths without ego or embellishment. Billy Graham lifted up our nation, not because he occupied the spotlight so masterfully, but because he knew he wasn't the one who belonged in it. He was just a happy instrument in the hands of his Creator. And so we trust that he was right, that his true reward is something far surpassing all of his achievements here on earth. A warm welcome for this good and faithful servant into his eternal home. The Senate and the nation are so very grateful for his service.
In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." Billy Graham woke up every day and did just that. He shared his love of God. That love had no end. That love had no barriers. He ministered to all walks, from some of the greats whose statues line this very hall: Eisenhower, King, Ford, and Reagan, to everyday citizens lining up to pay their respects. No matter how long the lines grew, no matter how much the times changed, his message never diminished. That love was so infectious, wasn't it? The man had such a gift for connecting with people. When listening to Reverend Graham, it's as if he's right there next to you, praying with you, turning you to the glory of God. He did not profess to have all the right answers. Look to the Bible, he would say. But he sure did point us to all the right questions and challenge us to look up and to look within, to reflect and to repent. And in those moments, when we felt weak in spirit, when our country was on its knees, he reminded us, he convinced us, that is exactly when we find our grace and our strength. Few loved others as Billy Graham did, and few were as beloved as he was. Here lies America's pastor. A man made great, not by who he was, but by who he served, with all of his heart, and all of his soul, and all his mind. We give thanks to God for the life and the works of this humble servant, now and forever.
Thank you, Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell, and most importantly, thank you to the entire Graham family for honoring us with your presence here today. Thank you. In the spring of 1934, Billy Graham's father allowed a group of Charlotte businessmen to use a portion of the family's dairy farm to gather for a day of prayer. On that day, the men prayed for the city. They prayed that out of Charlotte, the Lord would raise up someone to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. We are here today, more than 80 years later, because that prayer was truly answered. Billy Graham was 15 years old at the time. Just a few months later, he accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. That choice didn't just change Billy's life, it changed our lives. It changed our country, and it changed, in fact, the entire world. The North Carolina farm boy walked out of those fields into a great and beautiful history. Starting at a small Bible school in Florida, he soon led a nationwide revival. From a large tent in Los Angeles to 100,000 people in a single day at Yankee Stadium, to more than 2 million people at Madison Square Garden, over 16 weeks in 1957. And I remember that because my father said to me, "Come on, son." And by the way, he said, "Come on, Mom, let's go see Billy Graham at Yankee Stadium." And it was something very special. But Americans came in droves to hear that great young preacher. Fred Trump was a big fan. Fred Trump was my father. In London, Tokyo, Seoul, Bogota, Moscow, New Delhi, Saigon, Johannesburg, and scores of other places all over the world, Reverend Graham shared the power of God's word with more than 200 million people in person and countless others through television and radio, where people loved to watch and listen. In 1978, with the support of the Catholic bishop, who would soon become Pope John Paul II, Reverend Graham went to Poland and spoke of the meaning of the cross to a people suffering under the soulless oppression of communism. Billy Graham carried his message around the world, but his heart, as Franklin will tell you, was always in America. He took his message to the poorest places, to the downtrodden, and to the brokenhearted, to inmates in prison, and to the overlooked and the neglected. He felt a great passion for those that were neglected. Everywhere he went, Reverend Graham delivered the same beautiful message. God loves you. That was his message. God loves you. We can only imagine the number of lives touched by the preaching and the prayers of Billy Graham, the hearts he changed, the sorrows he eased, and the joy he brought to so many. The testimony is endless. Today we give thanks for this extraordinary life. And it's very fitting that we do so right here in the Rotunda of the United States Capitol, where the memory of the American people is enshrined. Here in this room, we are reminded that America is a nation sustained by prayer. The painting to my left is of the pilgrims as they embark for America, holding fast to the Bible and bowing their heads in prayer. Along these walls, we see the faces of Americans who prayed as they stood on the Lexington Green, who prayed as they headed west, prayed as they headed into battle, and prayed as they marched for justice, and always marched for victory. Around us stand the statues of heroes who led the nation in prayer during the great and difficult times, from Washington to Lincoln to Eisenhower to King. And today, in the center of this great chamber lies legendary Billy Graham, an ambassador for Christ who reminded the world of the power of prayer and the gift of God's grace. Today we honor him as only 3 private citizens before him have been so honored. And like the faithful of Charlotte once did, today we say a prayer for our country, that all across this land, the Lord will raise up men and women like Billy Graham to spread a message of love and hope to every precious child of God. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
Just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come. I just as I am, and waiting not to rid my soul of one dark lot, to thee whose blood can cleanse each spot, O Lamb of God, I come. I just as I am, without receipt, with welcome brought and cleanse relief, because thy promise I believe, O Lamb of God, I come. I because I promise, I believe, O Lamb of God, we come.
Let's bow our heads for the benediction. Almighty God, the fountain of every blessing, we praise you for your greatness and goodness that gave our nation and world the gift of your servant, Evangelist William Franklin Graham, Jr. We thank you for using him to preach your gospel around the world, to counsel and pray for national and global leaders, and to invite the multitudes to start and sustain an experiential relationship with you. Lord, we're grateful for his scandal-free life of integrity, characterized by conduct that was above reproach. You blessed him through his humility and commitment to you to bring deliverance to those held captive by sin, to restore sight to the morally and ethically blind, and to set on the path of freedom those shackled by addictions and despair. Thank you, Lord, that the force of Billy Graham's convictions transcended the boundaries that divide humanity, creating a spirit of oneness. Inspired by his great life, challenge us all to become salt and light to our generation. Use us, O God, as you used Evangelist Billy Graham, so that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts will always be acceptable to you. I pray in the name of Billy Graham's Savior and closest friend, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Hi guys, if you're on with us on our YouTube channel or on our website, we've been watching this ceremony, this funeral, lying in honor here of Billy Graham for the morning, really for the duration of our stream here from the very beginning when he came up in the cars and the hearse, arrived at the Capitol building, and then we went inside for the ceremony itself featuring Mitch McConnell, Speaker Paul Ryan spoke, and then of course the President, and a song presentation, a wreath laying, and a benediction by the chaplain. So this has been going on all morning. You can see here lots of people from the Capitol, from Congress, etc., paying their respects here to Reverend Billy Graham. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I was actually mistaken, Billy Graham is not the fifth person, he's the fourth person to ever hold this distinguished honor, to lie in honor. There's Franklin Graham there in the left corner of the screen, his son. Quite an emotional scene for him earlier when the camera panned over. It has been all morning, but Billy Graham is the fourth person to do this. The other three are two Capitol police officers who were killed at the Capitol in a shootout in 1998. And then also Rosa Parks held that honor in 2005 when she passed away. So he is now the fourth person to do this. Of course, let's get a shot back of what it looks like there to lie in the center there of the Rotunda. Of course, presidents are distinguished lying in state when they pass away. We have a couple reporters in our newsroom who were there to cover the lying in state of former President Reagan in 2004 and even former President Ford. So some of the people here have had some experiences covering this and seeing what it all entails. Unfortunately, a couple of them ran out on some stories today, so I don't have them readily available to chat with about this. But we've been doing it all morning. Meanwhile, I want to mention that what also is going on is Stoneman Douglas, the high school. The kids are back to school today. They were greeted with flowers, obviously lots of cameras. They're back in school to start the emotional recovery really in school today. And actually Fox News is down there catching some interviews with some people outside that school. Let's switch it up and go down there.
Metal detectors. And my son said that he's in 9th grade. He said that he wants somebody video on camera system, someone 24 hours to watch it. And that was two good ideas, they said. And then we saw the cops this morning. They felt a little more comfortable this morning.
Have you talked to them since they got out of school, and what did they say?
We're texting back and forth. Most of my wife and my daughter were texting each other. You know, they were looking. My son was little. 80% of his classroom's in the freshman building, and he was lost today a couple times. He didn't know where to go, so you know the teachers and my daughter was helping him. And you know he's going to go. You know it's a tough year for freshmen. You know, first year school experience. This happens. Very tough for him. You know, I'm just thankful that we took him out early that day at his school, and he saw his teacher, Mr. Beagle, who passed away that day. And he saw Mr. Beagle that day. Thank God. You know, gave him homework assignment for next year. They were doing some type of assignment. And he goes, thank you, Mr. Beagle said, thank you, Justin. I'll take care of it, staple it. I'll see you tomorrow. And then, you know, he's gone. He's saving kids' lives. So, you know. And that Sunday, you know, my daughter, after that, she had a nightmare that night. She said she saw the shooter come in the classroom. So, you know, it's taken day by day for them, the kids. You know, I'm pretty sure there's other stories with kids that haven't spoken and don't want to speak, you know, because they're startled still.
This is the first day of a long road ahead.
Yeah, my wife is thinking to homeschooling. We just came here just because we knew it was going to be a lot of cops this week and next week. That, you know, we got to have better security for the schools. Metal detectors, armed guards at the schools. I'm a firm believer in that. I've been doing mortgages for 21 years, and then when to maintain my license, I have to do a criminal background check. They have to run my credit for good character. I have to take a test every year, fingerprints every year, and to have a gun, 18-year-old, there's nothing. It's very easy. And there was someone who brought a AR-15 with expired driver's license, 18 years old. They should be 25 years old to buy a gun, which I don't think that's never going to happen. But in Israel, it's 27 years old, but you should be at least 25, maybe 23 to buy a gun. You know, and they should have background checks, criminal background checks, medical background checks. Credit report is more, I'm not saying you have to have a 700 credit score, just good character. If you owe money for the government taxes, child support, take the gun away and until you pay your bills and then give it back. It takes 6 months to be a mortgage licensed person. It takes 6 months to work in the Pentagon. My brother-in-law works in the Pentagon. So, you know, these rules should have happened. They were all talking about some Sandy or even Orlando shooting. It should have happened. Our politicians should have done something then. But I'm happy, not happy, but now the kids are speaking out. The kids are speaking out on the social media, and I'm thankful you guys are here because you're helping the kids spreading the word.
Thank you, sir.
No
Appreciate
problem.
it. Thank you for your time.
Not a problem. All right, take care.
Thank you. Okay. Cross that. We gotta wait for this.
Parkland, Florida, returning back to school Wednesday morning, just 2 weeks after the horrific school shooting that left 17 people dead.
I'm nervous as a parent. My heart is racing as I drop him off today. He's nervous. We need some form of security moving forward.
A cavalcade of police cars from agencies all across South Florida on hand for increased security. School officials told students this day is about emotional comfort, not curriculum. No backpacks needed.
I think it's going to be sad, but I know that all my teachers and friends are going to be there to support each other, so I hope it works out.
The principal of the school, Ty Thompson, tweeting, quote, "Everyone will start in 4th block as we reclaim the nest." The 4th block is the period when the shooting happened. This comes as the political backlash on gun rights and gun control continues across the country. Wednesday morning, the popular Dick's Sporting Goods announced they will no longer be selling assault-style rifles, and they will no longer sell firearms of any kind to anyone under 21. This on the heels of Florida's governor announcing a new school safety plan, which would include increasing funding and treatment for mental health issues, as well as adding at least one armed officer for every Florida school.
This is the most important thing we can do right now in our state. We have got to keep our kids safe.
The mood amongst the students this morning, certainly nervous and uneasy, but many of the students appeared to be relieved just to get back to school and sort of normalcy. In Parkland, Florida, Phil Keating, Fox News. Students in Parkland, Florida, returning back to school Wednesday morning.
We wanted to make sure that we showed them our support. We wanted to show them that we were here as a county to support them.
Along with our favorite Attorney General, Pam Bondi, along with Governor Rick Scott and all of his staff. Governor Scott has always made public safety a top priority ever since he was elected into office. Every year since, Florida has celebrated crime reductions. And there are crime reductions because Governor Scott has always been committed and supportive of local law enforcement, providing us with the legislation, the tools, and the resources we need to keep our communities safe. Governor Scott, today we applaud you. We applaud you for not taking a knee-jerk or emotional action in light of the Parkland tragedy, but instead developing a common sense approach to keeping our children, our schools, and our communities safe. Please help me welcome the great governor of the state of Florida, Governor Rick Scott.
You're on your horse?
Yeah.
Tell me how it was being back to school for the first time.
Well, it was like when you got to school, it was a little calming and it felt better. And I didn't feel as much afraid to be there after a while.
you ride your horse to school?
No, she rode her here, but we took the car.
Because I saw her outside the school, right? How did it, I heard there were also animals inside the school. And how
They
was
helped
the
really
day?
good, and they made me feel better. And yeah, well, I have 2 Goldens at home, and they did golden retrievers, and it made me feel like those golden retrievers were mine and stuff. So it helped really good.
You feel you'll be able to come back to school now that you've come the first day? For the first
Yeah,
day?
it'll be a little bit easier.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi. Hi. By any chance you speak Spanish? A lot of it I don't.
Crystal, spell it K-R-Y-S-T-A-L-C-O-L-E-M-A-N.
Sheriff, thanks for the opportunity to be here. We had the opportunity to come here right after Irma, and if you look at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department, we have a lot of sheriffs up here, we've got a lot of police chiefs up here, we've got superintendents up here, but if you look at this group of people, they care about you. They care about our citizens. They want everybody to be safe. They want our children to get a great education, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure we continue to grow this economy. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I also want to thank the Attorney General for being here. We got elected together back in 2010, and she has been a great partner to try to do everything we can to support local law enforcement. I always think, as I talk to families, they care about 3 things. They want a job, they want their children to get a good education, and they want to be safe. When they're going to school or whether they're driving down the street, they want to be safe. They want to be safe in their neighborhoods. 17 lives were lost 2 weeks ago today. You just can't imagine that happening in this state. I think all of us, when you hear something like this happen, the first thing you think about is your family. I have 2 daughters, I have 6 grandsons. That day I called my daughters and said, unfortunately in your lifetime, you're gonna have to teach your children about an active shooter and what they do. You're gonna have to teach them that even though they're safe at their house, they're gonna have to think about being safe at their school. Parents shouldn't have to worry about whether they get up in the morning and send their child to a school, whether they're gonna be safe or not. I've had the opportunity to talk to the families that lost their loved ones, and it's heartbreaking for them. I've talked to students that were shot at that school and in the hospital. I've talked to parents and students that go to parents have children going to that school and children going to that school. They're concerned. They're concerned about the safety of that school, and many students around the state are concerned about the safety of their schools. Florida's never going to be the same. And we got to make sure Florida's never the same. We've got to make sure we do common sense, have common sense solutions to make sure every parent knows that their child's safe. Right after it happened, I asked law enforcement, some of the sheriffs and police chiefs stand up here to come to Tallahassee and sit down and say, what are some logical solutions? I asked mental health professionals. I asked educators to come and say, what are the common sense solutions to make sure this never happens again? Many of the individuals stand up here, like me, are working with the legislature. We have to get something done. There's no alternatives. We have to change the direction of the state. The reforms that I'm proposing make it virtually impossible for anyone who has mental illness or is a danger to themselves or others to ever have access to a gun. My plan is a $500 million investment. We're also going to focus on increasing collaboration between our local sheriffs, our police chiefs, our schools, the Department of Children and Family, and Department of Juvenile Justice. We're going to have mandatory law enforcement officers at every public school in the state. All hours. All the plans will have to be submitted to the local sheriff's office to make sure, for approval, to make sure we have public safety, and that's not just on the officer side, but also on how we're going to make sure these schools are safe from the standpoint of the investments. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We need more law enforcement presence at our public schools. We're going to make investments in school safety, metal detectors, bulletproof glass, steel doors, upgraded locks. We're going to have anonymous See Something, Say Something statewide dedicated hotline, website, and mobile app. We're going to have dedicated mental health professionals for that every student will have the access to one of these mental health professionals. I want to embed in every sheriff's office a Department of Children and Families employee so they can coordinate the activities, whether it's working with the school system or working with DCF or DJJ. That was an idea that came to me through Sheriff Galtieri, something that he's already doing. But sheriffs across the state are doing things like that because they know that part of their job is to coordinate whatever problems there are in their community and the individuals that are struggling with either mental illness or dealing with harming themselves or others. I want a threat assessment team at every school, including the principal, the teacher, local law enforcement, and a DCF employee and a DJJ employee. The goal is maximum changes in school safety. We've got to take this seriously. No different than what happened when we made sure airports were safe. We got to do the exact same thing. We got to think the exact same way with regard to our schools. We've got to provide more mental health resources, and we've got to keep the guns out of the hands of people that are struggling with mental illness or threatening harm to themselves or others. There's nothing more important than to do all we can to make sure an evil act like this never, ever happens again in this state. I look forward to passing legislation. I ask for everybody in the state to call your local House member, call your senator, whatever you believe in, let them know we need to get something done now. We're in the last week and a half of session. We have the time to do it now. We have the resources. We walked into this budget this year with a projected $3 billion anticipated revenues over recurring expenses. And since then, we found out we even have more money as our economy is doing so well. So it's incumbent upon all of us to be active and make sure this never happens again. We all have children, our grandchildren. We have nieces and nephews. We have brothers and sisters. They need to know they're going to go to a safe school and they're going to come home safe. Now it's my opportunity to turn this over to the Attorney General. Again, I want to thank her. She's been a great partner to make sure that we focus every year on making this a safer state. As the sheriff said, we're at 46-year low in our crime rate, but we've got to do, and that's a real positive. This never can happen in a school in Florida again. Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, thank you. And Sheriff Conister, thank you. From the moment it happened, you were there to provide whatever backup anyone needed, and all of these great men and women behind me in law enforcement. We work as a team in Florida, and that's what we do so well. Within hours of it, I was on the ground with the families who had lost loved ones, offering the services that my office has to offer, helping with expenses, counseling, because we have over 3,400 victims, all of the kids in that school. The governor and I were in the hospitals, and Governor, I have never seen such a quick reaction from anyone as I did from you. Thank you. And he knew that we only had weeks left in session to make this work, and that's when he brought in all of these experts from all over the state, and he has been going non-stop to help these families. I cannot thank you enough. We're doing all the research on the mental health issue to make sure that it's constitutional, what we're doing to keep the guns out of hands of people with mental illness and to protect our kids. We've been working with, I was with General Kaufman this week, Cynthia Kaufman in Colorado. They have an app. They have a statewide app. And Governor, I haven't told you this. Listen to this. After the shootings in Parkland, children reported over 150 instances on the Colorado app. So the numbers went up, and some were viable. So that's why this is so important. With social media, parents, you need to tell your kids, if you see something on Snapchat, report it. And I don't care what happened in this instance, from now on, it will be given the attention that it deserves. So we're coming up with, I've let the kids name it, design the icon, and it will be a statewide way, they can do it under the condition of anonymity, to report throughout the state any instances of someone threatening a child, even bullying or suicide with a child to help. So we think it's going to make a tremendous difference, and I thank my colleagues in Michigan and in Colorado for their help in developing this. And Governor, once again, thank you for your leadership. And this is a man who truly cares about our state and has done something in record amount of time that we're going to get accomplished, thanks to the governor and our legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. Well, we have to get this done. We have a week and a half to get this done. We're going to get this done. But I just want to thank everybody that's up here. I can tell you that whether you're talking about sheriffs, police chiefs, the superintendents, everybody is focused on this. Highway patrol, everybody's focused on how do we make these schools safe, and we're going to do it. We have the resources to do it. We are going to get this done. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Travel the state today too. Okay, is everybody ready?
Governor, you talked about $500 million in funding and that you have the money. Are you sure we're not going to be shifting funding from anywhere else, from other school spending that's much needed in the classroom, or even from hospitals or the foster care system?
First up, this is the most important thing we can do right now in our state. I'm going to be traveling the state. I did it yesterday. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this happens. We have to get this done. We have the resources to do it. I walked into the session with over $3 billion projected revenues over recurring expenses, and since then, projected revenue states have gone up, not gone down. We have a strong economy. We have to invest in our schools. We have to get law enforcement presence at every school in our state. I wanted to make sure our sheriffs sign off on our school plans. They are responsible for law enforcement in their counties. I want them to sign off on the plans. And we can't let somebody that has struggled with mental illness, is threatening to others or themselves, they shouldn't have access to a gun. We have got to keep our kids safe.
What about the funding? Will you be shifting?
Oh, let me do it in Spanish real quick. Mis oraciones están con todas las familias y las víctimas por esta tragedia. Como gobernador, mi prioridad es la seguridad de todos en la Florida, incluyendo nuestros estudiantes. Es por eso quiero invitar $500 millones para la seguridad de nuestros estudiantes. Como gobernador, lo más importante es evitar que pase otra vez una tragedia como están en nuestro estado.
Governor, there are two main differences between what you're proposing and the legislature has proposed so far this week. One is, of course, arming school teachers. The other is a 3-day waiting period for purchasing a gun. Tell us where you are.
All right, guys, so that was Governor Rick Scott this morning in a school safety, gun safety news conference. We wanted to sort of bring that right after we showed you those live pictures of Marjory, Stoneman Douglas high school students returning to school for the first time. Now, the principal tweeted out this morning that today is focused on emotional recovery rather than school curriculum. So that she was saying, don't bring your backpacks. We're going to be focused on that today. Coupled up with that, big news in sort of the sporting goods world, right? Dick's Sporting Goods announced this morning, check out this tweet right here, this was the big news this morning, that they believe the country's most precious gift is their children. They are our future, they say. We must keep them safe. So beginning today, Dick's Sporting Goods is committed to the following, and they list in this litany of bullet points here that they will be no longer selling assault-style rifles, also referred to as modern sporting rifles. They already removed them from the Dick's stores after Sandy Hook, apparently, but they're going to be removing them from all of their stores as well, all of their 35 Field and Stream stores, which is another sort of version of the stores that they sell these hunting rifles at. And they're no longer selling firearms to anyone under 21. They go on to say they will no longer sell high-capacity magazines, and they have and never will sell bump stocks. Now, interestingly, they go on to say in their next tweet that they still also implore elected officials to take action and to continue and take more steps to ban certain things. And they follow up by saying that statement again, that they believe the children are the most precious gift to this country. So I'm curious what you guys think about that if you're watching on our stream, and if you heard about this, and what you think about this as we continue to follow the students that are back in school today. Fox News is down there getting some comment from some of them, so we'll be checking into some of that video as well when we have more of that. But for now, guys, we're still in our newsroom here watching this ceremony here kind of roll out for Billy Graham at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. You can see there people are starting to stream in. Now at 1 o'clock, that's when the Rotunda is actually open for public viewing. This morning it was for elected officials, special family members, of course, and people who were there at this ceremony to hear the speeches in honor of Reverend Graham for that wreath laying and the private service. But now we're nearing 1 o'clock Eastern time, so in about 20 minutes or so, this will be open to the public, and people will be able to come throughout until Thursday. His casket will actually be removed on Thursday, and we are reading that the honor guard, as is always the case, will stand guard, stand watch over the casket throughout the night. So that's a live look there at people in there paying their respects before this opens to the public in about 20 minutes. I want to bring you over to something totally different. Over in Chicago, last night, former President Obama spoke about his new presidential center in the south side of Chicago and what that is to entail. And if you missed it, I want to play out some of that video for you here. So take a look at what this is all going to be about. This was President Obama last night.
So I understand that impulse, but that's not how you build a vibrant community. So there are going to be some people who will not be happy and are not going to sign up for every single aspect of this project, which is it is the nature of a project of this size. But here's the thing, is like, you can never make folks 100% happy. So we want to be open, we want to listen. We are going to be fairer than fair, to quote Harold Washington, in how we approach the design of this presidential center. And the programming that's involved is going to continually evolve to meet the specific needs of the community. But at some point, we're going to get going. And the reason I'm mentioning this is just because, you know, I know that I love my folks in the Chicago media, but I also know that, like, it's just the nature of things that if you can find one person who was unhappy, they'll get some TV time. Doesn't matter what the other nine people said. Let's find that one person. That's fine. But I just want to let people know that we are being deliberate, we're being thoughtful, we're being inclusive. At some point, our intention is to get moving on this. Because 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I want young people all across the south side of Chicago, all across America, to be able to look at this center and say, this is a sign I count, and this is a sign that I can change the world. And that is more important than any other legacy that I could possibly have. All right? Thank you very much, Chicago. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So I've got time for a couple of questions. Straumanis is in here somewhere.
Here I am.
Straumanis got the mic. Mike, go ahead and call on somebody.
All right. We have received questions online from our neighbors on the south side. Is Wanda Brown in the house? Wanda Brown. There you are. All right, Wanda. Wanda, please ask President Obama your question.
President Obama, I would like to ask if the Obama Presidential Center will be open all year round.
Absolutely. Is this mic working? Can you all hear me? Yeah, this is a year. I mean, we might close on Christmas. But the goal here is to have this as a open, active community facility. And when you guys go into the breakout sessions, what you'll see is that the tower is the museum portion. And there will be constant access to the ground floor, and then at the top, by the way, we've got a tower where people will be able to look out and look back and see the skyline and see the city, and see the lake. Those lower buildings that you're seeing, those are going to be classrooms, recording studios, training centers, workshops, and the plaza will be full of activity. What you won't see in this picture, but what you'll see in the breakout sessions is we're then creating, children's playgrounds, additional athletic facilities, walking paths, all of which will be used year-round. And this is probably a good time for me to mention just some specifics about the kind of programming, because I know this is maybe something that people are interested in. We will be trying to create programming that is tailored for people at different levels. So let's say that there are a bunch of young community leaders who are already doing outstanding work. A young man who has already set up a program to help ex-offenders find jobs, or a young woman who's set up a coding program for young girls in the community. We might create a program where we're providing intensive support, training, mentoring, helping them figure out how they can scale up, how they can get additional financing, how they can get greater publicity, how they can expand their organization. At the next level, let's say there's somebody like I was when I got out of school. I want to change the world, but I don't know how to do it. We take that young person, we might put them through a day-long training program, or a 3-day training program, or a 6-week internship, where we help them develop their skills in order to organize a community, figure out how to work on an issue of importance, figure out how to publicize it, figure out how to get other young people involved. Then we've got programs under the umbrella of My Brother's Keeper, which we initiated right after the Trayvon Martin shooting, to focus on young men at risk, young men of color, young men who lacked opportunity. So we expect to partner with the schools to work on everything from mentorship programs to apprenticeship programs to coding programs to enhanced athletic programs. Michelle has a counterpart set of programs for young women in communities. All of these we can partner with existing organizations as well as schools. And what's really exciting is that the longer we work and the more we're developing these programs, what we're discovering is that there are all kinds of people who want to partner with us. So there are employers who say, we'd love to diversify our workforce. Can you help us design programs to take young people, put them in part-time jobs that they can then access after they graduate? Universities want to partner with us to figure out how do we work with young people so that they're prepared for college, know what the application process is, know what kind of financial aid they can access, make sure they're getting their applications in on time. We've got artists. One of the reasons that we want to put in a recording studio is that we'll have the capacity to bring in Chance or Jay-Z or Bruce Springsteen and have them do a workshop for young people who want to know, how do I get into the music business, or how do I become a producer? And so we'll have the opportunity to continually upgrade and update the programs that we're doing based on what it is that young people need. And the kinds of partnerships that we're prepared to enter into. And the community will have continuing input in how that evolves. I wanted to emphasize that because we're actually going to get started on some programming at a very small level as early as this year, just to test things out. We want to, I personally am already in conversations with various organizations, for example, in the city, that are already working on reducing violence in the city and finding out how will we partner with them and bring some additional resources and attention to their efforts. We're already looking at a first class of what we're calling Obama Fellows, who we'll place in various organizations so that they can get concrete hands-on skills in working with a nonprofit organization or an advocacy organization. So all these things we're going to develop slowly. We're not going to try to do everything all at once because what we want to do is test it and find out, is this working? And are the young people getting something out of it? And is it resulting in something concrete? More kids getting into school, or more kids getting jobs, or young people staying out of trouble. And then we're just going to have some fun stuff involved in the programming, like we are looking at creating some additional athletic facilities, as I said, so that at some point, when it's ready, I can organize my little all-star basketball game. And I got a bunch of friends who I think I can call. I may be getting a little old now to hang with them, but I might get out there at least for 5 minutes before I'm out of breath. All right, next question.
Sir, we have a question here from Anita Josie. Anita, are you here? Hi, Anita. Step up.
Hi, President Obama. I have a question. How is the Presidential Center working to revitalize the South Side without pushing out existing residents like myself?
Well, this is really an important issue. Some people have asked, by the way, why did we locate on a park? Part of the reason was, as I described earlier, when you look at the most vibrant parks in the world, whether it's Central Park in New York or Grant Park downtown and Lincoln Park, or in Paris, Luxembourg Park, what characterizes great parks is activity and life and movement and people being around and people being outside and stuff going on. Which isn't to say that you don't want quiet spaces and contemplative spaces, but it just means that it's a lived-in place. It's not behind a glass case to look at. It's something to be in. That's the point. But one of the things that we were also committed to is making sure that we weren't displacing residents in the construction of the actual facility. And we will not be. Now, the issue that then gets raised is, okay, that's true, but isn't it true that once this gets built and all these visitors are coming, and everybody sees how pretty Jackson Park is and how nice the lakefront is, more and more people want to live down here. And there is constantly a balance that we've got to strike between making sure that existing residents are benefiting from increased economic development, benefiting from increases in home values, and benefiting from more businesses being active and all that revenue, because that creates more wealth and more jobs and so forth. We have to balance that with the fact that we want more economic activity in this community. And because that's what creates opportunity, and with more economic opportunity, it does mean that there's going to be more demand for all kinds of amenities in the community. So you can't have one without the other. You can't say we want more jobs, more businesses, more opportunity for our kids, but otherwise we want everything to stay exactly the same. It just doesn't work that way. But what we can do is make sure that we're working with organizations and institutions in the community to preserve affordable housing, to make sure that it is residents that are benefiting. Those are the kinds of plans, activities, foresight that we have to have in order to get that perfect balance, revitalizing and renewing the community, but also making sure that people who are already living there are benefiting from it. And I know that I heard a couple people saying, well, we're concerned about, like, maybe rents might go up. Well, here's the thing, is that, like, if you go into some neighborhoods in Chicago where there are no jobs, no businesses, and nothing's going on, in some cases the rent's pretty cheap. But our kids are also getting shot on that block. So what I want to do is make sure that people have jobs, kids have opportunity, the schools have a better tax base, and if the rent goes up a little bit, people can pay it because they got more money. And if they're seniors, if they're on fixed incomes, if they're disabled, then we've got to make sure that there's a process in place to encourage and plan for affordable housing units being constructed there. So, but here's the one thing I will say. I think a lot of times people get nervous about gentrification, and understandably so. But what I will also say is this: I first came to Chicago in 1985, and was on the South Side for, I'm just doing the math real quick, 20-some years before moving to Washington because of the presidency. It is not my experience during that time that the big problem on the South Side has been too much development, too much economic activity, too many people being displaced because all these folks from Lincoln Park are all pouring into the South Side. That's not what's happened. I mean, it's happened in some places along, near, like West Loop area. Most of that is happened right around the city. There is so much room. Think about all the abandoned buildings and the vacant lots that are around here. We've got such a long way to go in terms of economic development before you're even going to start seeing the prospect of significant gentrification. It's Malia's kids might have to worry about that. Right now, what we got to worry about is broken curbs and trash and boarded up buildings, and that's what we really need to work on. This is a good time also to raise a point that I know some folks have talked about, and that is, how do we assure that the community benefits? And I know that there are some folks here, I heard at least one person back there, but I'm sure there are a few more talking about the idea of a community benefits agreement. And I want to address this because I actually think it is admirable and important that communities, when they've got big projects coming in, are paying attention to, okay, who's building it, who's benefiting, who's getting the jobs, how is it all being organized, how is it all going to be arranged. So I respect the intent and the motivations on this. But what I've said before in previous community meetings, and I just want to repeat, is that we're not coming in here as a for-profit organization. Like, I'm out there raising a bunch of money to get this thing built, to get the programming up and running. I'm not getting a salary out of the foundation. And Michelle and my motivations are entirely to make sure that the community benefits. And the concern that I have...
All right, guys, taking you back into the newsroom here, breaking this up for just a second. Again, that was former President Obama yesterday speaking about his presidential center. But I want to take you down to Parkland, Florida. Right now, the Broward County School Board and Superintendent are holding a newser on the students returning to school today. Let's go down to Florida.
Being with us today. The cadence of this media briefing is our superintendent, Mr. Runcie, will speak. Our school board chair will give some remarks, and then we will open it up for a few questions. And I'm just going to say we won't be able to take everyone's questions today, but we will try to get as many of them in as possible. And my colleague and I will be trying to make sure that we try to give the, I like to say, the entire spread of their chance.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for this media update. I'm joined by our school board members, School Board Chair Nora Rupert, Vice Chair Heather Brinkworth, School Board Member Dr. Rosalind Osgood, and School Board Member Robin Bartleman, and our School Board Member Ms. Patty Good. The past 2 weeks have certainly been a challenge. To say that it has been emotional, heartbreaking, and overwhelming would certainly be an understatement. But we've seen the worst of humanity, but we've also seen that followed by incredible acts of kindness and support from throughout Broward County and across the world, and we're extremely grateful for that. And for everyone that's certainly sharing in the grief that we're going through. Today was a major milestone for us. We took a major step in the recovery process as students returned to school today at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. They continue to be inspiring students. They continue to show us their resilience. We saw a really great turnout at school today. We had an attendance of 3,123 students. That's about 170 short of what we would normally have. So that's an attendance rate today of about 95%. So I thought that was outstanding. On hand today were also approximately 150 counselors that were ready to listen, to provide support, and offer any help that was needed. There were also a lot of therapy dogs. There were over 40 of those on site today, and other animals in support as requested by staff around the campus. We also had additional staff I was very pleased today to see almost all of our high school principals in Broward County were here, in addition to other administrative staff, here to provide support and encouragement to their colleagues and the staff at the school. So as you know, today we had a modified schedule. School ran from 7:40 to 11:40. That's the same schedule for Thursday and Friday. It's a modified schedule as we look at this as a transition week. The words I would use to describe this week are flexibility, support, and love. That's what we're trying to provide to our staff, our students, to get through this period, to work our way back into some sense of normalcy. We know things will never, ever be the same, but we're going to try to make sure that we can figure out how to move forward. So today we gave our students a lot of opportunity to get reacquainted. It was felt like almost like a family reunion where the Marjory Stoneman Douglas family finally got back together after a couple weeks. I'm sure they shared stories. They hugged each other. They have an opportunity to begin to go and see their classes. We had to rebuild the entire master schedule to be able to fit all the students into the remaining facilities. So many were going to new locations throughout the day. So that was another part of what we certainly provided to do. So in terms of flexibility, I've been asked, how many students were looking to potentially do transfers out of the school. And again, out of the 3,200, almost 3,300 students, we only had 15 students so far that asked for information, expressing an interest in looking at other school options in the county. As far as employees, there are only about 4 employees out of about 215 that asked for information regarding additional employment options. As you saw today, there was a substantial and enhanced security and law enforcement presence at the school. We're going to see a lot of that presence continue as we go throughout the school year. And it was actually, just great, again, to see the entire Broward County family come together. I want to continue to thank our entire community for their support. I especially want to thank the media today for honoring and respecting the wishes of our students, our parents in our community, not having any helicopters flying over the building, giving folks appropriate distance. That is very much appreciated. And finally, I would say that, we continue to be inspired and amazed at our students and how well they've responded to this, how they provided leadership on a national level to bring attention to some very salient issues that have emerged out of this tragedy. So hopefully out of this tragedy, we will see some real change finally in this country so that we will never see this again. I would like to have our school board chair, Ms. Nora Rupert, share a few words as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As we all continue the long and emotional recovery process, our district remains committed to ensuring that the victims, the families, and employees of Marjory Stoneman Douglas community have the support they need. There's a variety of options available for those needing counseling and support services during this difficult time. Our district's website, www.browardschools.com, and you can go to /crisis support. It brings you to incredible amounts of resources for parents to talk to their children about tragedy, for children's books, for counseling. It goes into a lot of options. In addition, we also appreciate the incredible outpouring of support from our community and across the country. It has been astounding and humbling to have other school boards from around the state and around the country contact us and say that they're thinking of us. Is there anything that they can do? We don't feel alone in the process. We know the immediate and long-term needs for the victims and their families are immense. Donations can be made to the Broward Education Foundation GoFundMe account of go-fund-me stoneman-douglas-victims-fund. There's also a mobile giving text to donate campaign, which is much easier. You can send a text to 20222 with a message of Parkland in all caps, and they will forward a $10 donation to support the families and the victims of this tragedy. Offers of support services that are continue to come in for Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School can be made at browardschools.com/we support. And I'd like to thank our superintendent and his staff who've been spot on through this whole thing, and they've been a pillar of strength, as well as my colleagues beside me and those that were unable to make it today, without which we would not have gotten through together, without which we wouldn't have gotten through unless we leaned on each other. And that's what we're doing as a community, as well as a board and a school district at the time. So thank you all for showing up today and for once again being there and getting the information out to our community. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What will things be like tomorrow? Is it going to be pretty much the same as we saw today with the show of security, the sense of security, the number of free counselors? Give us an idea of how things will be Thursday and Friday.
So we will probably see, a little bit of a change, but we're going to assess things day by day relative to the number of counselors. Are we going to have 150 counselors on site tomorrow? Staff's going to make a determination today based on, demand that we saw today, support that was requested, and certainly we're going to look at any feedback that we get from the administration and teachers. But again, we're going to do whatever it takes every single day to help this school community through this difficult process. Yes, 95% of the students came back. There's 3,293 students in the school. About 95% of them attended school today. No, I wasn't concerned at all. On Sunday when we had the open house, about 80% of the students showed up. The conversations I've had with students and families throughout the community is that they were eager to get back to school, to be with their peers, their colleagues, to meet with their teachers, and just get going on with the healing process. And I was able to observe the students today and watch them in the courtyard, and they seem to be enjoying their time together. I saw smiles, high fives, hugs. So it was really heartwarming to see our young people, expressing themselves, and it seemed to enjoy being with each other. So we love to see that. Yes. How many officers are here today? I really couldn't count the number. There were officers that came from all over Broward County to show their support today. But I will tell you, on an ongoing basis, we're going to have a significant enhanced level of law enforcement presence at the school. It won't look like what you saw today, which is probably 200-300 officers from around the county. But we're certainly going to enhance security here. And what I would say is that every school in Broward County, every school in the state deserves enhanced security presence. So I continue to implore our state legislature, which is considering legislation now to provide funding for additional school resource officers and security personnel in each school. I believe the proposal on the table calls for approximately 1,000 new school resource officers. The governor's proposal had something very similar, but they should absolutely not end this session without providing resources for us to be able to do that. What's that question? So again, we're going to have a substantial amount of law enforcement there at the school throughout the remainder of the school year and into the foreseeable future as necessary. We're not going to have hundreds of police officers here. This is not, some armed camp, and we have to just strike a balance in terms of the security that we have and the presence that's there. We want to certainly send a message of safety and security and confidence to our students, our faculty, and our community, but it can't be overwhelming So you'll see a greater balance as we go through. I think what you saw today was really just a lot of the law enforcement presence. And they have a right to be here today because when 2 weeks ago, when I arrived here, the presence and response from law enforcement across Broward County was extraordinary. And it was a sight to behold. And that just really kind of shows you how strong this community is. Yes, they can expect to have those therapy dogs as long as necessary. Well, I think the question you're asking is, are we going to see school resource officers with rifles? Because school resource officers are armed individuals, and they are trained by the different law enforcement agencies in Broward County. We have agreements with municipalities, and in some municipalities we have agreements with the Broward Sheriff's Office. They're responsible for the law enforcement personnel that are trained and staffed at those sites. So the question about the rifles, we're actually going through that now. We've actually met with them. We believe that we have a solution that would enable the sheriff and the school resource officers to be able to be comfortable that they have the capacity to protect our school grounds the way they believe they should be, and at the same time respecting some of the concerns that we've heard raised in the community about the presence of rifles. So we have a solution that we're working through to be able to accommodate that. And I'll let the sheriff's office speak to that. Ultimately, it's the school board's decision in terms of, how our grounds are actually policed and maintained, but it is the school board is not responsible for officers that are there in terms of their training and whatever else they need to ensure that they stay up to date with the latest strategies that they need to deploy on our school facilities.
Was Cruz ever a member of the Promise program?
So let me just answer this one question, because there's this narrative that's going on out there that's extremely false and I think disrespectful to a program that we have in Broward County called Promise. That program, it's an acronym that stands for Preventing Recidivism Through Opportunities for Intervention, Mentoring, Support, and Education. It's an intervention program for students that are involved in what we call minor, non-life-threatening infractions, right? So this particular individual, Cruz, was he never participated in the Promise program, wasn't eligible for it. There's no connection between Cruz and the district's Promise program. As far as discipline in the district, I think there's been some concern that somehow the district is lax on discipline for infractions. I can tell you on an annual basis, we expel over 300 kids a year. We have thousands of students that receive suspensions. We're very serious about our discipline code of conduct, which you can find online. We apply it and work with our schools to make sure it's done consistently. Cruz did not participate in any Promise program. There's no connection between Cruz and anything in that realm. Well, so it was, as the data I understand it, November of 2016 that the ESE team, so understand he was a special needs student relative to emotional and behavior challenges that he had. So he had an IEP. The way we work with students that have IEPs is required by law. We continue to monitor them. We provide services. They're evaluated and reevaluated. When there are incidents and issues that come up, that team gets together, and it's a team of professionals who can evaluate that student. In November of 2016, they made a recommendation for him to be reassigned back to one of the behavior centers. It was at that time that Cruz, who had turned 18, has a right to do that. He refused services, and the parent also agreed with that desire. So he revoked his rights to receive ESE services from the district in November. It would be counseling, all the other types of supports that we were providing to him. One last question.
We need to spread it around a little bit, so we're going to take a question from over there. We understand that you all have a lot of questions. We do want to be fair to everybody, and we will only have time for 2 more questions. Is there a question on that corner? Okay. Is there a question over here? Then I'm going to come back. All right, then go ahead and wait. My understanding is that in 2014, there was an effort by the sheriff's office.
2014? Okay.
And also on the rifles for schools. And this is because they had done some research at the Newtown. And so my question is that something that went to the school board? Was that considered in 2014? Or why
So let me.
2014, why wasn't the SRO not armed the day of the shooting?
This is the first I'm hearing that. I've never heard of that or seen a request from the sheriff's office for that in the past. So I have no knowledge of that coming before me or the school board. These conversations about the school resource officers carrying rifles has been a conversation that has just come up subsequent to this horrible tragedy that we've had. It may have occurred in the sheriff's office in the past. I can't comment on that, but it became a conversation between the sheriff's office and the district recently. Yeah. So the movement that is being made, all of this is at a critical decision point in the legislature. We are hopeful that the legislature will pass a bill that will include funding for building a replacement building at a different site on the campus, demolishing the existing building, and providing funding for a memorial that we will work with the victims' families to determine what is appropriate to erect on that site. We will know much more about that within the next couple of weeks as the legislature concludes and wraps up. But that's on the table. It is being seriously considered. I know it's got the support of the governor and some of the key decision makers in the House. So we have a high degree of confidence that they'll do the right thing and respect this community and the families and the tragedy we've been through so we can rebuild and move on. Thank you very much today for coming, and please continue to pray for our families and our community as we move forward. And again, thank everyone for their continued support as we go through this difficult period. And God bless you all.
Is it wrong for us to say he was expelled?
Yeah, we have
Definitely a difficult period there for teachers and members of that school board, and of course the students who are returning 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after the massacre in Parkland, Florida. Pretty amazing to hear from some of those leaders there of the school board, very much poised and calm about this return, saying that those comfort dogs are going to be available as long as those kids need them, and being very sensitive, of course, about that topic in general. He was saying that around 3,200 or so students have returned, more than the 3,000 that was expected. So that is pretty good news. We saw some video of the kids streaming in this morning, people handing them flowers, of course, there was this pathway with the media surrounding it. So it seemed to be a little bit of a chaotic return in that they were there to cover it. But as the school board superintendent mentioned, he was thankful to the media that there was not this sort of inundation with too much noise and chaos as they returned to school for the first time after 2 weeks after this massacre. So no choppers overhead, nobody distracting some of that, what is to be a solemn return, of course, for these kids to get back into their studies, but to take the day and possibly even the week to really emotionally sort of get back to the place they need to be to continue on their studies. So as the principal tweeted out this morning saying, don't bring your backpacks, this is about emotional recovery today and in the following days. So really intense their day for Broward County, for those students. We're going to continue to kind of follow them and track them and to see how this week goes for them, the second half of the week down there as they return to school. Meanwhile, we've been covering this. Here's a live look at the Capitol Dome, gorgeous shot right there, where Billy Graham is lying in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. That is now on public display. Public can come there to honor him through Thursday when his casket will be returned down to North Carolina. So it's there for today into tomorrow morning. So I'm sure that I believe the hours there are 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the public to go there to pay their respects to Billy Graham. So that's a live look outside the Capitol. Yesterday, I don't know if you guys caught any of this, but President Trump later in the afternoon made an announcement about leadership in a White House initiative for historically Black colleges and universities. And it was quite interesting. We took it to our Facebook page, but didn't get a chance to stream it here on our channel, on our website. So check it out, this short announcement here by President Trump and HBCUs.
Thank you, President Trump and Secretary DeVos. I appreciate the trust you have placed in me to chair the President's Board of Advisors on HBCUs. It has been my life's work to unleash talent in all of its forms from wherever it originates. As CEO of the Society for Human Resource Management, we call it SHRM, I work with employers across the country and indeed across the world. No matter their industry, size, or longevity, today's organizations all share the same challenge: closing the skills gap while building diverse, inclusive, engaged workforces. For each of them, the war for talent, as we've come to call it, will never end. And thanks to this incredibly strong economy, it's now a way of life. And today, people are an organization's only competitive advantage. Employers depend on our country's educational institutions as a reliable source of the multifaceted talent they need. HBCUs are a critical conduit for this talent. Every year, over 300,000 students turn to these institutions, HBCUs, for their education and to prepare them for their careers. This President's Advisory Board can be a nexus between higher educational institutions and employers. As CEO, I've been a CEO in both nonprofit and for-profit organizations, a former Fortune 500 chief HR executive, and someone with over 7.5 years of experience in the HBCU space. I am really up for this challenge. At SHRM, we are experts. We are the experts on people and work and on building powerfully diverse organizational cultures that drive success. SHRM's 300,000 members impact the lives of over 100 million people in the American workforce. By working together across all sectors, the HR profession, HBCUs, and this advisory board, we can strengthen the relationship between education and employers. We call it the 2 E's. This advisory board can facilitate this critical relationship and support innovations in work-based learning opportunities for HBCU students. And as the world's largest human resources organization and association, SHRM can now work with CEOs to connect industry to the diverse talent at our wonderful HBCU institutions. This board has an incredible opportunity to highlight HBCUs as wellsprings of the diverse talent American employers want and need today. HR and education, along with the support of this administration, must move together forward. I look forward to working with Secretary DeVos, Jonathan Holyfield, and the White House HBCU Initiative team. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, everybody, we're back in studio here at Fox 5 DC. Thanks for joining us today on our stream. I have Sam in the chair with me.
Hi.
Sam's been working on some web stories today,
Right.
just kind of following what's breaking, and really not a ton going on in our newsroom right now. It's not very urgent or chaotic, but right now we've been following a lot of big national stories, of course. Just tracking the viewing of Billy Graham, lying in honor at the Capitol today. We took that from the beginning. Went up a little early on the stream, so I think we're actually going to roll it on out shortly. But just mentioning a couple other things. Did you sort of follow the Stoneman Douglas kids coming back? I know there was a lot of outcry about stuff that was going on with Dick's Sporting Goods coming out about their announcement about rifles.
I think both are definitely worth talking about.
Right.
The Stoneman Douglas thing is really, we were saying earlier, you and I, just how tough it is to be, I can't imagine being in their shoes, but I think it's appreciated that the administration at the school, they said not to bring any backpacks, that the kids are just the idea of being in school and being where it all happened, I'm sure is shocking enough. So not have to worry about classes and homework and assignments and tests is probably a good idea. I was saying that, selfishly, even coming back to school after something embarrassing happened the next day is traumatic enough. Let alone dealing with entire tragedy at your school. So I can't even imagine. But then the fact that a business like Dick's Sporting Goods is kind of taking more of a. But the other thing that I thought was interesting is, and I didn't realize this, but Dick's Sporting Goods, they did take automatic assault rifles, out of their stores prior, after Sandy Hook. But now there's some other stores that they're eliminating.
On their tweet, I think it's 35 other what they call field and sport or field and sales stores. Some other sort of sector of their stores, and they're going to just completely eliminate, which is really interesting. Coming, of course, on the day that these students returned to school, 2 weeks after that massacre that left 14 students, 3 staff members dead. And I was going to say, too, I can't really even picture my 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old self going back into those hallways, and sort of, I think, physically being in a space, of course, conjures up thoughts and memories and feelings. And so I'm trying to, this whole day, I'm watching these streams, I'm watching them interview people outside, and a lot of parents and officials, of course, happy to bring their opinion to the table and chat with some of the news crews. But even so, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, and it's really tough for me to do on this day.
Yeah, it's just been hard, but I'm glad we're talking about it, because just to have it go away is not helpful either. It's tough to talk about, but at the same time, it's definitely necessary if we want change. And it's hard as a journalist because we're busy when horrible things happen, because it's something that we have to tell everyone out there, all you guys. If there's something happening, it means we have to tell you guys. That's our job. But at the same time, it means that something terrible has happened, and you have to take a step back and think about, these are people, these are families, these are parents with kids. Working, and then I used to work at a radio station in DC, and the day that Sandy Hook happened, I was working with my colleagues who are mothers, and they had to go on air and report that children had died. So that was really, a wake-up call to me to see my friends and colleagues who I admired and, wanted to be like one day when I grow up, so to speak, that they had to deal with this because they have kids. And, I'm sure as a parent, even working in this business, that's your thought, was there a lockdown at my kid's school? Is my kid okay?
I can't remember. Did they end up? I believe they ended up tearing down Sandy Hook. Is that right? Physically, or at least turning it into a memorial, not using it for school, right?
I am not sure.
I'm not positive either. I should know that, but I remember. If any of you guys know, let us know. I remember that was in the talks, and they were talking about it. And this is years later, so obviously something's been done with that. But I want to say they reconstructed another area or school.
I wasn't aware.
I think, and for this one, they're returning to the same building, those same classrooms in that same freshman school sort of portion of the school where the shooting happened. That's exactly what happened. One of our producers was telling us this morning. It was, in this specific building, in these certain classrooms, and I'm sure walking up and down those hallways, opening your locker, going about the day-to-day, maybe even sitting back where you were when you heard about it. I mean, it's just we don't really pause for a second and kind of think about what that must be like for these kids. But I remember, you're with it when you're in high school. You're smart, you're astute, you're getting ready for college. You're in that formative time of your life. And this is when these kids are returning. you know, a lot of their parents giving brief statements. They're giving brief statements to the press about what it feels like, and they're talking about what they came in with today and what they feel. Maybe even they have, some of them have grief counselor type support and dogs even. So for help.
But I did hear that they are going to tear down that building where the shooting occurred.
Oh, specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
And make it a memorial or something else.
So they'll switch out.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to tear down the whole campus.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a much bigger school than what Sandy Hook was. So, yeah, I don't think the cost would be,
That's so interesting.
And for those of you who didn't watch, who aren't local viewers, we did have, there was a fundraiser here in DC just last night, and a lot of alumni throughout the country in California, Colorado, here in DC, they're doing fundraisers to help the alumni from Stoneman Douglas High School. So
are they doing more today in this tonight?
I don't believe it's today, but I know definitely yesterday we had a reporter out there. But I think that's nice that like the wider community, now that, you know, these alumni, they're not in high school anymore. They're grown up. They are parents with families and jobs, and they left Florida for one reason or another, either for college or for whatever. Even actually one of our producers, Casey, she's from Florida. She just moved to DC from covering, I believe, Jacksonville or another part of Florida, but she's from that area, and she said that was our rival high school.
Wow, really? She's connected. Yeah, I know another acquaintance in town too, who's actually a journalist as well, who was an alum, and I was kind of watching his posts on it because he was speaking at the alumni event. And so, yeah, definitely there are some close ties and some close to home hits for that. But we're going to continue to sort of watch as the week unfolds for these students, and I'm sure there'll be more coverage from Fox News that we'll take in about that. Meanwhile, we still have this live look inside the Capitol Rotunda, where Billy Graham, his casket is there on view, lying in honor for the public to see until 8:00 p.m. Eastern time tonight. That is there, and then he'll be returning. You know, his casket will be returned to North Carolina tomorrow on Thursday. So that is the story there. We've had this feed up from the beginning, so I guess we'll come full circle with that.
Yeah.
And Sam will keep working on the web stuff and putting up the relevant stories. And we'll be back with you guys tomorrow for another stream into Friday as well. So, yeah, take care, guys, and thanks for watching. Sam, thanks for contributing.
No problem. I do what I can.
Yes. All right, we'll hear from Sam again soon, and hopefully some other people inside the newsroom as we continue our stream, guys. As always, our digital coverage continues on our platforms, Fox 5 DC on all platforms, Twitter, fox5dc.com, and our Instagram as well that we contribute to. So join us again and hope that you subscribe to our channel. We'll catch you another day. All right, guys.